Hey guys, welcome back to Altaz-Review, where we talk about some of the latest games and releases. The second half of 2024 has had some amazing games come out, but right now, there's one that's got all the rage: Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero. It's been a long time since we've got a sequel to the Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi series, and this one did not disappoint. And even more than just talking about how good the game is, Sparking Zero has opened up a new debate about the campaign difficulty and how all the mechanics work in multiplayer. So let's dive in. After 17 years, we finally got a new Dragon Ball Z Tenkaichi release. We've gotten a bunch of amazing Dragon Ball Z games in the last few years, like Kakarot, Fighter Z, and Xenoverse 2. But none of them really matched the flavor of Tenkaichi. The open arenas, pretty much every single character, and unique attacks and mechanics, Sparking Zero has really taken us back to the glory days. And it's not just a blast from the past, it's got several new mechanics that change up the game and make it even more competitive, while keeping the general controls and even bringing back all the great unique attacks for each character and the character variants. Budokai Tenkaichi is known as Sparking in the Japanese series, hence the name Sparking Zero, which finally lets the US and Japanese names line up. And one of the coolest ideas in the Sparking series is how most characters have different versions based on which saga they're from, as long as there's a notable difference. It's simple things like what kind of spirit bomb Goku uses and what kind of transformations Vegeta has access to. The older games like Budokai 1, 2, and 3 simply allowed you to slot certain abilities for your character before a battle. That means you choose what special attacks, ultimate attacks, and transformations they can use. But in Sparking games, you can pick the Goku from the earlier sagas to use Kaioken Rush, the first Spirit Bomb variant, and normal Kamehameha. Goku Mid is the Namek version who can only turn Super Saiyan with attacks and throws that matches accurate combos from the anime. He even uses Angry Kamehameha, which is that last big attack he uses to finish off Frieza. And honestly, that's one of my favorite attacks in the game. Depending on his variant, Goku might use Warp Kamehameha as an ultimate or as just a special attack. And there's all kinds of little details depending on which version of the character you use, or even depending on the transformation of that character. Thanks to so many variations in attacks and special attacks, every single character in the game is pretty unique and totally viable to play competitively. But keep in mind, you can really feel the power level difference when using a weak character against the universal threat kind of characters. But it's not about what character you use, it's about the fundamental mechanics. There's a billion different ways to dodge, block, counter, and even ways to counter someone's counters. And that can go on pretty much indefinitely. There's some timing-based blocks and counters which don't take any resources like ki or skill points, but they work like blocking and parrying. Guarding works well for most situations but can be broken pretty easily. But using guard like a parry lets you teleport behind the enemy, and both you and the opponent can chain these teleport dodges infinitely, until one of you messes up the timing. The counter can be held to do a kind of block counter, but can also be broken with certain moves. But if you use it like a parry, you'll do a really quick dodge animation to dodge their whole combo before knocking them to the edge of the map. There's also a super counter that you can use to save yourself from a huge combo, but the timing is really tight. There's a lot more mechanics, but these blocks and counters will decide the match. Even your special and ultimate attacks can make a big difference depending on what kind of attack they are. Some chase or rush special attacks like Kaioken attack can do a lot of damage and close distance easily, but they can be blocked and the attack doesn't really start unless you get a clean hit from the beginning. And if you use an energy attack against a rush attack, the rush guy gets blasted on the face. You can only clash 2 energy moves or 2 rush moves. The same goes for ultimate attacks. There's even some ultimate attacks where you need to land the first energy attack cleanly before the real attack starts. Like how Krillin's first destructive disc needs to hit you without getting guarded, and then he continues with chain destructive disc and really does the big damage. All these mechanics make for a really challenging fight whether you're online or offline, and that's where you get to the complaints. Seeing complaints about the online fights is expected, when certain moves are being exploited or if the hardcore players are too good for the casuals. But a lot of complaints about difficulty came from the offline players too. When it comes to Dragon Ball Z games, fights can be tough, but you never really get stuck on them, nor do you have to have perfect reactions to win. But in Sparking Zero, just the fight with Grade 8 Vegeta caused several players to rage quit. Not everyone was stuck on this fight. We were all a bit frustrated by how much effort it took. And it does make sense since I took a couple of hard-fought attempts to beat him, and I have a pretty good sense of parrying. But it looks like the Dark Souls veterans found the mechanics a bit easier than others. Even still, all the different mechanics in the game are kind of important to keep track of, and fighting giant characters is totally different from regular fights, since a lot of attacks and tactics just don't work on them. So I'm sure most players just couldn't figure out how to approach the fight when half their attacks weren't working and knocking away Grade 8 Vegeta. And no one had a second to think of alternate measures when he starts the fight with a barrage of mouth cannons. You either try whatever you can and get blown up by all of his attacks, and you don't get time to think about how to respond. But I guess when you're this deep into the whole Dragon Ball Z fight mechanics, if it didn't require enough skill, I think the game would have fallen flat by this point, especially considering all the Tenkaichi veterans these days. On the online side, we've seen even more frustration in different ways. To begin with, Dragon Ball Z has never been much of an online trend. It's one of those games you'd only ever play with friends or siblings in split screen. But now that online is one of the only ways to play, players are being matched up with either extremely skilled players, kids, jokers, role players, trolls, and so many different kinds of people. The skill disparity mixed with some players exploiting characters like Yajirobe's Senzu Beams and Viz's Auto Dodge leads to a lot of broken controllers and high heart rates. Plus, all the new mechanics have turned this brawl-out game into a really complex fighter, where players are dodging, parrying, and timing attacks just perfectly enough to make it feel like a matchup right out of the anime itself. Frustration aside, Sparking Zero has some truly amazing moments. All in all, Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero has really upped the standards of a Dragon Ball Z game, when the standards were already so high. It's a true Game of the Year contender, especially in terms of online fame. Considering that Overwatch was able to win the award as an online game, Dragon Ball Z having an amazing story mode, a local fight option, and a superbly deep online system, it's definitely in the Game of the Year candidates and a strong challenger for the title for sure. We're getting super close to the Game of the Year awards, and there's a bunch of amazing titles coming out right to the last day. It's gonna be a tough competition, but Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero has definitely exceeded expectations. It's been great getting to relive the Dragon Ball Z story again, and fighting all kinds of players in some crazy matchups. But let us know what you think about Sparking Zero and what other games you've been hyped about for the Game of the Year. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Until then, I hope I see you in the next video.